the video description. Also, the link to this coloring page is in the video description, so you can download it and color along with me, which would be fantastic. Starting off with Pan Pastel as the underpainting. I'm sort of jumping right in here. I'm using a brown for her, but it will blend with all of the other colors that I put on top. So later on, you're going to see how different colors can have a big effect with the underpainting, or how the underpainting can have a big effect on the colors I put on top, actually. What I'm doing first here is blocking out my shadows with the brown. Gives a nice sense of lighting, and also it kind of helps me figure out how I want to build up her form, the sense of volume. It is a grayscale drawing that I did initially with this coloring page, but I still like to block out the shadows, figure out her form, kind of remind myself of the shape of the figure. So I'm just slowly adding kind of like a wash, a light wash of color from the pastel. You can see how I'm dabbing it on that paper off to the side, just because I don't want too much color here. It's just a bit of color as the underlayer or the underpainting, and it's already helping to build out her form, uh, remind me where the lighting is coming from. I loved those hands. I super loved drawing those hands. I loved the bone structure in the fingers. It was just really fun to draw those. So, of course, I'm having a blast every time I go to the hands. But little bits at a time, little bits of color, slowly building it up. And I'm actually using brown for all of her underpainting. So the hair, the skin, the shirt, it's all the same color underpainting. However, again, as I build up the other colors on top, you're going to see how the underpainting can change and affect all the other colors. The ripples in the shirt, that's where the shadows would be there, so that's where I'm putting it down. And hair, a lot of people talk about how, they're not sure how to tackle hair, especially really busy hair. Just look for the shadows, look for the darkest spots first, and those are the sections that you're going to be blocking in first. I love red. I really love that red. Um, but I'm still sticking to the shadows to create the form for her hair. It's just blending with that brown. So the thing with red is I love it, but it can steal the show. So sometimes it's best to blend it with other colors so it doesn't just take away all the attention. So it's blending with the brown I've already put down on the paper. And if you'll see again, I'm still dabbing it off on the side. So it's not just a bunch of red pigment going right on the paper. It's more of a wash of red that is blending with that wash of brown I've already put down. Very warm, rich underpainting that way. But again, back to the hair, you can see how I've just blocked in the sections of shadow. And now I'm blocking in sections of shadow on her arm. It's all about taking it piece by piece, taking a complicated image and just breaking it down into smaller, simpler sections. And it's about having fun. I love coloring in grayscale. When I was looking for or trying to figure out my color inspiration for this image, I thought about some famous Impressionist artists, actually. Van Gogh, Degas, Monet. Um, and so they're actually the kind of the inspiration behind the colors that I'm using here. So that bright yellow blending with the red, that's not exactly a local traditional color really for making a color for a skin tone, but having fun with color, playing with color, that is pure impressionist right there. A couple things about them is so no black. Monet, for example, never used black. It changed the hue to something that didn't exist in nature. So no black going to be used in this image. And also there they really liked to keep their basic colors. If you think whites, yellows, greens, blues, and reds, and those were the colors that were blended together to create the image. For her in particular, the woman in particular here, who I'm coloring in, I actually looked more at Edgar Degas. I'm getting super art history fancy here, but he was an impressionist, but also kind of more of a realist, and she is more of a realistically drawn character. So I decided to look at Degas for a bit more inspiration. Oh, here you can see in the hair using that light lavender to soften it now. So I blocked out the shadows and now I'm going to my highlights with the pastel still, but it's that nice, super soft wash. It's softening her hair. I just really was going for an overall kind of soft look. So I'm going to be layering pencils over this, which will make it a bit more crisp and way more detailed, but a very nice soft under painting. And then Pan Pastel, my best friend because it's erasable. And I love to erase some of the detail work. So you see those little flyaway hairs, some of the highlights. I'm going to erase away some of the Pan Pastel so the white of the paper can be that really bright white highlight that I want in the underpainting for the hair. And also getting rid of all of that in the detail work of the extra stuff that I'm not ready to work on yet. But getting back to Edgar Degas, who I was just talking about, let's see, he was an impressionist, but he emphasized drawing, and that's why I think it really kind of works. We're looking at him while I'm working on the woman. He hung out with actually Monet, Cezanne, and Manet, but rumor is he often like argued with them. But he was an impressionist, and he liked to break a lot of the rules of realism, especially in terms of color. So more realistic drawing, but pushing the reality of color. And that's kind of what I'm doing here with her. I mean, look at her hair. That's not exactly a realistic hair color. Look at her skin with that bright yellow in her forehead. That's, again, not exactly a realistic, color or hue that you would expect in a skin tone right here. But I'm still letting the drawing show, the realism show. And that's a bit more Degas. Later on in the background, I'm going to veer into the world of Monet, a bit more Monet style, but right now we're going to go more with the realism and playing more with color. Now I'm going with my pencils. Love that I can layer colored pencil on top of pan pastel. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know it's one of my favorite techniques to do. And I often will use Prismacolor pencils just because they're very well known. They're very popular. They're very easy access. They're an okay quality and also okay affordable, which is a pretty great mix. But I'm going back to that same rule that I used initially when I was putting in my underpainting, which is blocking in my shadows. So with grayscale, something I say all the time is it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, dark, medium, light. So you pick a dark, medium, and light hue or color as your starting point for blocking out or coloring in the grayscale drawing. And I'm starting here with my dark and I'm blocking out the darker sections. Oh, look at those fingers. Look at the bone structure in them. So fun. So that was the dark, and now here's the medium. And I often think of medium as a bridge. It connects those darker, shadowy areas to the lighter areas. And it's blending over the underpainting, and I'm trying to be a little bit careful here just because I didn't use traditional colors, that bright yellow, the very strong red. I just have to be kind of aware of the colors that I'm coloring over them right now because they're mixing right on the paper, building up the form. I love how you could see, like on her shoulder and right at that elbow, how the bright yellow and the red blended beautifully to make that orange color. Now I'm again going away from the traditional colors, and because I loved that orange that the red and yellow made, I'm taking an orange pencil and I'm using that to build up another layer of color. So going back to the 1, 2, 3 dark, medium, light for grayscale, that's the starting point. You don't have to stick with just a dark, medium, and light, especially with skin tone. If you ever look at skin, there are so many colors just in your hand alone. Um, so it's really fantastic once you can branch out from the dark, medium, and light and create just a really rich, multicolored skin. So I started with browns. Now I'm playing more with oranges, and there's going to be play with pinks and reds and blues. And I'm just layering gently. So something I also say is don't go too dark too fast. So if you go too dark too fast or press your pencil down really hard too quickly, it'll fill up all the tooth of the paper. And then your paper can't hold any more color. You can't layer any more colors together. You can't blend any more colors together. And that's just like a major bummer to me because I love to layer colors. I love to go over and over and over um, layering my colors and blending them just to create that really rich tone. And it helps, I think anyway, to bring them to life. It helps really create a multi-dimensional character. Something else I do, and you're going to see that here, is when I get to my lightest colors, so that's a super light peach color right there, um, I go over the lightest areas, first of all, but also I go over the midtones and the darker shadows with it. That's my blender. I'm blending all the layers that came before together with that light color. Some people like to use a colorless blender, which is fine. That's a fantastic technique, but it's a different look. I like to use my lightest color within the color palette that I've chosen and use that to blend my colors together. It kind of helps unify the whole image or the whole color scheme. And I'm still not pressing down super duper hard, even when I'm doing all this blending here over her and her arm and everything. I'm not pressing a bunch because I like to ration out the tooth of the paper. I like to make sure I can keep going back and building up more and more volume. And the paper that I use, I'll put that in the video description too. It's a heavier paper. It's a cardstock paper that I often use, just because I like to make sure that it can it can withstand me. I like to make sure my color can or my paper can survive me coloring on it. That's also why I actually prefer printing my images, printable coloring pages, because that way I can choose the paper that I want to use. Do I want to use a cardstock? Um, Recently got the Ohuhu marker paper, so have been printing on that and playing with that. Oh, red again. Love my red, my favorite color ever. So I'm putting it in as a nice, rich accent into the shadows around the eyes, the nose, the lips. You see right near the hairline, and it's really helping to make her, pop, to have all those cast shadows, start to pop a little bit more. Red does that. And I'm not trying for, again, the realism because remember, I'm still thinking about Edgar Degas and Impressionists and how they played with color. So I don't have to go strictly real. I can put that maroon in there. I can have that bright yellow, splashed across her forehead like that. I'm not being too strict with myself about color. And it's actually kind of an important thing for me as an artist. Oh, there's the blue. Take a nice dark blue, put it in the shadow. Ah, just makes it so rich, so gorgeous. Um, but it's so important for me as an artist to give myself permission to play with color, to play with the ways that I'm using color, to look back at what other, amazing artists have done and say, you know what, they broke the rules. It's okay for me to break the rules. I don't have to be so hard on myself. So I layered in that darker red and the darker blue into the colors, and now you can see I'm going back with the midtone and blending and softening. Um, I like I really wanted her to have that nice, soft, gentle look. I just thought it was such a gentle overall drawing. The way, the gesture, the way she's holding the flower. Um, I just thought a gentle approach might look really good here. And that's also why I did the pan pastel for the underpainting. And I'll soften it again later on with the pan pastel a little bit more. You'll see that uh, right over the pencil itself. So it's going to be actually almost a sandwich of pan pastel underpainting, colored pencils building up, the volume, the colors, making it really rich, and then pan pastel over the pencil. I made a coloring sandwich basically. And now I'm hungry and want a sandwich. So there's the light color again going over, using that as my blender overall, unifying the palette of her skin. Whenever there are big pauses, chances are I'm talking to one of my kids. I don't know if you guys know, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they often hang out in the studio with me. Uh, but that means I'm multitasking. I'm a work at home mom. I multitask. Okay, so here again with my shadows, I'm blocking them out, not with black, with a dark blue, which is blending with the underpainting, which was the red and the brown. And now that dark blue, you can see it's blocking out sections of her hair. It's a very busy hairstyle that I put on her, that I drew on her. Um, so it's very important, if you don't want to get lost in all the strands of hair, to block out the shadows. It kind of makes sense of the madness. And I love the way the blue pencil blends with that underpainting. And it's kind of a give and take. I want the softer look, but I also need, the individual lines, the separate lines, to make the hair have a little bit of realism to it. So it's a bit of a balancing act. That is a darker blue. It's not black. I know, look, kind of looks black here, but it's a darker blue. And again, pushing the shadows. It's also why I do a lot of time lapse videos. Is I'm often having to pause to talk to my children. And you guys don't want to hear me, telling the 4-year-old to stop throwing match cars. So now, again, because I'm not sticking with the realism, I don't have to follow the rules of realism. I'm playing with color and I'm building up this nice, purplish, reddish, burgundy, multicolor palette in her hair. Building up my shadows. I love the movement. So as I'm applying the color in her hair, if you'll notice, I'm applying it with the movement of the pencil lines that I drew earlier when I first made the coloring page. So I'm moving in the direction of the pencil lines. They're kind of my guide. That's a mid-tone color. You can see it's sort of connecting the darker shadows to the lighter areas. So the mid-tone is the bridge. It's the connector of the darkness and the light. Very, very poetic, very dramatic. Um, I'm still letting the lightest parts of the hair stay untouched. So you can see the lightest highlights are still sort of showing. And again, I'm going to go back with Pan Pastel and I do a bit more with that too, so I can get kind of a really soft look with it. I love this hair. I love the color. Usually I am so realistic and I stick very strictly to realistic colors, and I was just super excited to kind of push, the rules of realism while I was coloring today. And there's the sandwich. There's the pan pastel sandwich I told you was going to happen. So right over the pencil marks, now I'm going to be doing some pan pastel. And it's right over the highlighted areas. And you see how it's softening it? Kind of gives it a bit of a painterly soft look. And because it's lighter, see, I'm dabbing it off to the side on that paper, so it's just, again, a light wash of pan pastel. So I'm not losing the work I just did with the pencil. I'm not losing all of the detail work that I did with my pencil marks. And I'll be adding more pencil marks to just make sure that I, don't lose any of that fun detail on the hair, little stray hairs. But because I'm layering the pan pastel now, it just gives it that really soft, gentle look, almost like a hazy sort of look. And my good old dark blue in for the rescue just to make sure that the shadows still look crisp, and that again, that's the balancing act, I think. You want things to be soft, you want things to be gentle, you want to have a nice, almost romantic feel here. That's what I'm going for. But I also don't want to lose the drawing. I really like the drawing. I don't want it to disappear. And that's the balancing act between the soft, hazier look of the pan pastel and the crisp lines of the pencils. It's a very romantic image. But I think, technique can really have a big effect, on the subject. So this was romantic. If I had decided to just, do really stark, pure colors, very vibrant, no blending, that would have had a totally different effect here. If I just decided to go really dark and, intense brush strokes and layers of color, again, that would have really affected this overall image. So I think technique really matters. I think the way you put down your color really matters. It really affects the overall look of the work of art. And that's why, I'll tell people, I make a coloring page, but it's just the beginning of uh, an artistic conversation. It's up to whoever colors in the coloring page to finish the conversation. I like to see where people kind of take the image and how they interpret it and what colors they choose should go on it. You can see me moving pencils, and that's how you know I'm moving on to something else. And when you see all those little pencils sort of moving around, that means I'm shifting focus. The shirt I really liked, again, pushing the whole idea of, realism. So I did a brown and yellow underpainting, and that yellow is super bright. And then I thought it would be really fun to play with the blue pencils over top, but not make it turn green, which is really challenging and a really fun experiment if you can do it. So I'm putting the blue in the shadows and blocking out my shadows as usual, but I'm not gonna turn the entire shirt green. Um, I'm just layering my blues and letting my blues shine in the shadowy areas. And there you can see the cast shadow of the hair casting a shadow on the shirt, just sort of adds to a little bit of that sense of volume. But you can see how my blues are blending there. I'm getting some green, because there's yellow as an underpainting. You can't help it. There's going to be green when you put blue over yellow. But I thought it was really fun to just try and give the blue and the yellow, their own space in the shirt. And then a way to bridge the two was that soft medium brown. So again, remember how I said before, the medium tone is the bridge, it's the great connector. Right now, I'm using that soft brown to connect the blue with the yellow. Very much just in the spirit of playing with color, experimenting with color. So very much in the spirit of, the Impressionists, who I was thinking a ton about them while I was doing this. And there's my absolute favorite light cream. Use it all the time for one of my light colors. I always have to order it separately because I use it so much. I always need to buy more. Um, it's such a great color. Look how it just blends everything together. It does soften that blue a bit, but it's not a striking yellow. You know what I mean? It's not that vibrant, bright yellow that's gonna make you like have to, glint when you look at it. It's very delicate, soft cream color, and it doesn't invade the blue. When I blend my colors together there, it doesn't take away the richness of the blue. Sometimes in my videos, you'll see me using that cream color, and the pencil will be down to like, nothing, like a little nub, a little nub of color. And that's when I'm probably like have some more on order. Okay, pen pastel sandwich again. This time using my white, dabbing it off on the side a little bit there, putting just nice sort of painterly accents right over top to soften the overall image. But again, it's a light wash, so I'm not, losing all the work underneath. A little bit of detail work. Once I'm done with an underpainting or I'm done, doing, a lot of the washes of colors and the color blending and the overall palette, I like to go back and do a bit more detail work if I'm doing a portrait, like a face, um, and just sort of fill in around the eyes, the eyebrows, the lips. I don't usually do it until I'm done or mostly done with a lot of my washes just because I just want to see, how it'll work, if I have to do a bit more color here, a bit more color there. Another pan pastel, just light wash of color. Actually, it's white, but it's gonna make the colors look like a soft painterly sort of wash. Oh, look at the hand, look at the hand. I love those fingers. Look at the highlights. I love all the bones in hands. I think they're super fascinating. These are the things I think about. I think about the bones and fingers. Okay, so I am putting in that just sort of, again, I'm going for that romantic, soft look. So I'm creating my little pan pastel, pencil pan pastel sandwich. But I do want her face to be, a little crisp around the eyes, those details, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. So that's why I do the pencil right there. Just want to make sure that her facial features aren't lost while making the whole overall look, a bit more soft. Just making sure there some of my shadow areas are still a little crisp. Just because, again, I think that's almost a contrast thing. You have overall, a very soft painterly look now. So that little bit of crispness, those slight crisp lines, kind of accent and accentuate the or exaggerate the softness. Oh, there's the jump. So I probably had to get up and go help my kids with something and then readjust my workspace. That's life. Okay, now we're moving on to the next part, which is, the background and the that detail all around her. So starting off with my next underpainting, and now that's the turquoise blue, that pen pastel. But again, so a lot of this is going to have that. See, I'm totally talking to my kid when I'm pausing like that. A lot of this is going to have that turquoise blue underpainting. But I'm going to be doing different colors blended with it, so it won't all look turquoise blue by the end. Just right now, I'm doing a universal underpainting. That lavender. And remember, all the colors are going to be written down in the video description. You don't have to guess what I'm doing. I'll have it all written down for you. Look how the lavender blends with that blue. How fun is that? And then, of course, yellow and blue make green. So there's a nice green right there. And that yellow is very striking. That's the same yellow I did for the underpainting with her face, especially over her forehead. So visually, in a way, it's going to kind of tie together very nicely. I have yellow there, yellow there. But the weight of the coloring is going to be different. The amount of yellow, the amount of other colors I blend with the yellow, the types of colors I blend with the yellow, they're all going to be different. Red is my favorite color. So blending the red with the turquoise. And you see how I'm actually applying the underpainting in a certain direction, in the direction of the flower petal ripples or those wrinkles, however you want to call them. And that'll help sort of start to develop already the look of the flower by already giving it just sort of a feel of those ripples in the underpainting. Then I gotta move stuff around because I need space for my mole stick. That stick right there is my mole stick, my absolute favorite thing on earth. Artists have been using them. It's not my idea. Mole sticks have been around forever, since like the 17th century, I think. They're great for supporting your hand, your arm. I roll it with my hand, like as I draw, and it supports it. Genius. Whatever artist, whoever actually came up with the idea of a mole stick was a genius. Super simple, and I'll actually include a link to that also in the video description, so you can get one for yourself if you want. That one is homemade, but not everyone has that kind of time. So here you can see the pencils going over the pen pastel underpainting. Um, Really love that soft lavender, building up the blues. And you can see here also, I'm gently creating that kind of ripple or wrinkle look in the petals. Makes it visually more interesting instead of just a flat surface. Trying to create a sense of volume, a little bit of texture. And the fun thing with flowers, and maybe this is why Impressionists always do flowers, is what are the rules for colors in flowers, really? I mean, can someone really say there's no such thing as a purple flower? Of course there's purple flowers. Green. There are green flowers. There's all these colors in flowers. So it's actually fantastic that you can just go nuts and have fun with color when you're coloring in flowers. And I thought this nice lavender, I don't know, visually I just thought it would be a nice balance to her hair, actually, with a little bit of pink right there for the highlight. Visually, I thought it would be a nice balance of color. And there's the peach. And again, I use my lightest colors to be the blender. And it blends all the other layers underneath it. Does a really good job. And so this is totally off the mark, but or off the subject, but I do practice. You know how you see people do like swatches of color when they get a new set of colored pencils, so they can see what the colors look like on paper. I like to do swatches of blending. I like to see what colors look like blended together. So I'll think, for example, that underpainting of the turquoise and the yellow. I really, really wanted to see, how it would look if I blended that underpainting, with these blues over top. And then the yellow, the light yellow as the blender, the lightest color to blend it all together. This is really how I experiment with color and how I learn. I learn a lot about color when I play like this. So, I mean, right there, I mean, in your head, in your mind, you can imagine, like, say, the color wheel. If you don't, definitely look up the color wheel. Red and blue blend to make purple, but I also have that yellow there. So, I mean, how does that affect, the overall look? And that's where I think it's so important to practice and to experiment with color, to, not be afraid to take risks with color. And sure, I'm not, too worried about realism here. I'm having my, slight impressionist moment with this coloring page. But I take the lessons that I learn here, and the next time I want to, do something more realistic, I remember the colors and I remember how they play together. And I can totally take these lessons, these color lessons with me into the next art project. And isn't it fun just letting loose sometimes? Breaking the rules. And everyone does it. Everyone sets kind of rules for themselves when they make art. You go, oh no, this is the way I have to draw hair. Oh, this is the way I have to color in a flower. It's kind of fun when you give yourself permission to break the rules. I think that's another reason why I was thinking about Impressionists, because they broke all the rules. That's what they did. They saw all the classical artists, they saw what all the realist artists were doing, and they said, let's not do that today. So you can see the pencil going over. I am building up a little bit of volume there. You can see I'm building up my shadows a bit more than what were originally drawn in the under drawing in the original drawing. Just having fun figuring out, what colors blend to make a nice rich green there. I like green too. I love red. I like green. I like all the colors. I like most of the colors, I'll say that. And I'm sticking still with the drawing. So I guess playing with color but staying with the drawing makes me still kind of in the Edgar Degas camp here of the Impressionists. But when I get to the background, I'm gonna veer more Monet, I think. But yeah, just because I'm sticking with the drawing doesn't mean I'm not experimenting. I'm still playing with color. I'm still pushing technique. That is a fantastic dark green, by the way. Very striking over that turquoise underpainting. It blended beautifully. I was very excited when I put down that dark green and seeing how it interacted with the turquoise. Isn't it weird, the stuff that gets you like excited when you color? You color all the time and it's a conversation you don't have with a lot of people. I think you'd be like, oh, I put down this turquoise underpainting the other day, and let me tell you, the dark green that I put over it, wow. It's just not something that comes up, in like my daily conversations with other people. But do you see how that those strokes of that dark green pencil They just really stand out beautifully over that underpainting. They give the leaves an instant, texture and an instant, sense of volume. I was really loving this whole thing. And then my lightest color, again, is my blender. It's keeping with that palette, um, blending all those layers together. And that's part of it too, and that's almost a tricky part. Because I don't use a colorless blender, I use the lightest colors. I have to be very aware of how they're all gonna play together on the paper. And I think that does take a little bit of practice, a little bit of experience or experimenting on you know, extra paper, spare paper beforehand. There have been many times when I'll, start a coloring page or I'm coloring something in and I'm blending my paper all right or my colors all on the paper and then I look down and I realize I just sort of made sludge. And I didn't want to make sludge. That has happened. Now, really light yellow just to make it pop. Very rich, rich colors. And talking about all this planning and figuring things out, um, in a minute, I'm going to go very Monet. And, I've been talking about the Impressionists, and I think a lot of people think that they were spontaneous, but they were not spontaneous. Monet, for example, he seriously studied his subjects. He planned out the entire paintings ahead of time. He worked really hard to get, the end result. So when I talk about, the Impressionists, and then I say that I planned and I do study and I try things ahead of time, um, that's what the Impressionists did. They didn't just go out there, whip out a canvas and paint. They actually did not do that. That's not true. They planned ahead. They worked really hard to get the look that they were going for. Long pause, talking to my kid about something. I don't know. Okay, then we're going with the pan pastel sandwich again. So pan pastel underpainting, color pencil, then pan pastel on top. Already did it with the girl, so visually it's very consistent and it's giving that nice soft look. See how it's just, again, softening the whole thing. Not losing the pencil work that I did underneath. It's still there, you can still see it. It's just giving it that gentle, sort of hazy look. And again, it's something I don't do very often. I don't give myself permission to do it very frequently. But I really enjoy it. I was having a ton of fun doing this. Little dab, 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 then just sort of pulling that highlight into the flower petal. And yes, I just touched the paper. I know. So I use the eraser to erase, the pen pastel, the little bits that I don't want on the paper. And you're not supposed to touch your paper. I use there you see, you use the paintbrush. You're supposed to use the paintbrush, guys. That's what you're supposed to do. Get a nice bristled paintbrush and use it. Don't use your fingers like I just did to pick stuff off the paper. It's not good. Do as I say, not as I do. Now we're going Monet in the background. I committed, guys. I committed to doing a little more Monet in that background. And he liked to use paint straight from the tube. He mixed his colors right on the canvas. Uh, and that's what I've been doing this whole time. But I think here you're really gonna see it as I'm doing the background. Straight from the pan pastel palette to the paper. Might dab it a little bit to get any extra, excess off of the applicator, but otherwise, straight to the paper. And yes, I do use an eyeshadow applicator for a lot of this. If it's gentle enough to go on my eyelid, it's gentle enough to go on my paper. Monet used small dabs or strokes of color as part of his technique, and that's what I'm doing here. Dab, 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 over and over again. Dab, dab, dab. Very Monet. Um, it's not pointillism. Someone mentioned the other day or said the other day, oh, pointillism. It's not. Pointillism is you have a bunch of really super small dots of color, and they kind of blend or blur together in your eye, like as you're looking at it. Monet didn't do that. He did dabs or quick, short strokes of color. I know. Very, very intense conversations that I have about art. I guess you could say it's kind of a Monet's technique is more broken color to create a sense of light. So the color is all kind of like little broken fragments of color applied to the canvas, or in this case, the paper. Dab, dab, dab. I kept saying that in my head as I was doing this to remind myself. I kept saying dab, dab, dab over and over in my head. That is one thing when you do something a little out of character, for when you're coloring or whatever, you have to constantly remind yourself to not fall back on, old habits or old techniques. At least I do. I always have to remind myself. So I'm trying to, build up a form here in the background with the dab dab dabbing of the Monet style. But I'm going to be playing again with color too. And again, it's a background, so I can play a bit more, and it's Impressionism, so I can definitely play with color. Um, but overall, I mean the bright yellow in her skin tone, the like splashing across her forehead there, the red hair, um, not worrying so much about, the colors all being perfect, in the flowers and everything. That's they're non-local colors. Local color is the natural color of an object. So a banana is yellow. But with non-local color, I use these accent colors to add more depth and brilliance. In shadows, adding blue, reds, and browns. It'll make the shadow look a lot more rich. Or again, that yellow in her skin tone. The goal is to make it look a lot more rich and vibrant. Help the art pop off the paper. It's an exaggeration of the image. And of course, the Impressionist did a fantastic job of this. Um, I'm just playing. What can I say? I'm playing. But I'm having fun and I'm sharing it with you. So there's that lavender. Again, that's the lavender that I used, especially on that big flower over there. Now I'm dabbing it into the background. So there's a lot of visual balance with the color play that I'm doing. It creates almost a cloudy effect. It's a little bit, forming around her, mirroring her frame, her profile, but it's very wispy, very soft. So it's not a stark outline. Not like again, look at her hair. You can see those cast shadows from her hair on the arm, for example. That's a pretty stark outline. This is way more gentle. Oh, that light yellow. Look at it just pop. And yellow, right next to that lavender flower. I was so excited to do that there because, purple and yellow are opposites. And That's something actually that Impressionists also did quite a bit was they played with opposite colors, colors that were opposite on the color wheel. So yellow and purple are opposites, and I was very excited to dab that yellow so close to that flower. And you can see it blending a bit, right on the paper with the blue. But I'm not blending them too much. I'm letting, them all kind of have their moment in this background. Makes it very bright, very rich. I'm trying to balance it a bit, so a little bit of that, that yellow down lower, um, then the yellow a little bit up higher. Again, just like, everything else, but it's a balancing act. There's a give and take. I was having a ton of fun with this, and the texture of the background and the softness of the background, but I also didn't want it to feel too chaotic. Balancing now, I had the yellow to the left, now adding a little bit of yellow to the right, and it's right next to that beautiful lavender. So again, complementary colors, but not overlapping them because again, that's if I overlap too many colors, if I, just do too much, then I end up just sort of getting sludge. I was super careful there. The lavender can build up that a bit more to balance it all out. It's a give and take. But really, this was just such a joy to play with. And I draw my applicator because that's what I do. I was not used to holding it and all the dabbing. So here, last little bit that I'm doing is the softening. I already softened, all of my pencil work, the colored pencil work. Now I'm softening my pastel work with that white pastel. And it's making some very gentle transitions between the colors without really blending the colors. Because you see, I'm still dabbing. I'm not doing strokes of color. I'm not making them, blur together, blend together. Very, very gentle still. I'm trying to make the whole image gentle. I'm not sure I succeeded, but it was fun to try. It was a really fun, attempt at doing a new technique and playing with all the color. Blending the colors to the edges of the paper. So, the edge of the paper, I let the white of the paper still show, but by using my white pastel, it just sort of like lets it sort of gently disappear. And I think I like how the overall, sort of painterly effect worked on this coloring page. A couple things I'm, do a little differently next time, I think, but it was fun. It was really fun, trying my hand at Impressionism a little bit here. A little bit of extra shadow just to make sure that her form is going to stand out against that background. See those highlights next to the darker areas? The contrast. Contrast is so important. The contrast complements. Remember, I'll put all the colors and the link to this coloring page in the video description so you can download this coloring page if you want. Color along with me. I'm just going to keep on dabbing. That's all I said over and over again in my head. Dab, 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 dab. I was saying it in my head after I was done doing this too. Dab, dab, dab. Didn't want to lose my lavender, so I added a little bit more. I like that soft lavender. It was very, very gentle. Don't go too close to the yellow. Want that yellow to shine. Don't want to... It's such a bright yellow. I don't want to dampen it at all. And I couldn't let the center of that flower go, guys. I just couldn't. It was too flat. I couldn't do it. I just had to go back and fix it. In my mind, it had to have a little more volume to it. But still doing my little pastel sandwich effect to get that nice highlight. Soft, gentle, painterly highlight. Very fun. You can see it's almost mimicking the background, the shape of that heart shape. Very loose. I like it. But that's going to be about it for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining me in the studio. Remember to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next videos, and stay creative. Bye.